So this is what the skirt look like. It's not a full circle. It is... Hello Fig and Me friends. Today we're diving into one of my favorite topics, adding beautiful historical sewing details to your doll's clothing. Think heirloom techniques, delicate hand sewing, cartridge pleats, and all those unique touches that bring so much beauty to a garment. Beginning with heirloom sewing for those early spring days and beautiful summer afternoons when the dolls are excited to let go of the knits and long socks to wear see-through linen dresses. Heirloom sewing techniques became all the rage during Victorian and Edwardian times, especially for undergarments, children's clothing, and flowy tea gowns. Nowadays, we don't wear such detailed clothing, but we can certainly incorporate it into our doll's attire. I have been experimenting and trying these techniques in doll size for quite a few years now, even teaching a workshop last year where I taught how to make a collar with button stitch embroidery on scalloped edges. We learned how to add lace, do flat fell seams and bound seams, as well as cutting linen on the grain by pulling a single thread in the fabric, and all manner of lovely sewing tomfoolery. Using lightweight fabrics for this is a must, such as batiste or gauze-like linens and cottons, as the techniques lend themselves to very ethereal fabrics, highlighting the contrast in layers and adding noticeable beauty to the garment just through its construction. This year, we tried again a few more techniques of heirloom sewing by making a dress for my doll, Miss Teacup. We started by constructing an excellent insertion band using 2 different laces and ultra-small Pintucks. Then we built the bodice and the sleeves with hand-gathered and sewn lace to entrecot, gathered cuffs and sleeve belts, precious details to make our grandmothers proud. The last tutorial in that doll dressmaking series consisted of designing the skirt for the dress, how wide or long to make it, how to choose the placement and width of the tucks, and how to space them for maximum beauty. Miss Teacup, the dress owner, is mighty pleased with her new dress. A small gift from me to repay her kindness for traveling and teaching others how to make her with me. A few years ago, I tried making a lovely A-line petticoat for Poet, my muse doll. Instead of making the normal tucks or pin tucks that I was accustomed to, we endeavored to make them corded by sandwiching a length of thick thread in between a twin needle in order to stuff the pin tuck as you sew it, creating a fabulous raised effect. This charming design detail is one I'm eager to revisit, perhaps in my upcoming fairy tale outfit dressmaking series. You can use a thicker cord to create an increased raised effect, shape them according to a design, think waves or geometric shapes, or even use cords in a different color when using very lightweight fabric to highlight the raised pin tuck even more, kind of like shadow embroidery. Beyond pin tucks, corded or otherwise, another detail that adds beautiful structure and historical flair is pleats. Let's talk about my most recent love, knife pleats. There are all manner of pleats, as many as there are ways to fold fabric. Their main purpose is to create fullness, add movement to your garment, and as a decorative element. Now, knife pleats are not necessarily heirloom or even considered historical sewing, but pleats have stood the test of time and they're still in heavy use in this day and age. You can attest to the power of pleats if you're a young one wearing a plaid school uniform, love to wear a kilt, or desire more room in your trousers. We have double pleats, inverted pleats, box pleats, kick pleats, accordion pleats, sunray pleats, goblet pleats, pinch pleats, etc. But for now, let us devote our time to knife pleats. Confession time. I used to struggle with knife pleats, finding them difficult to get sharp and hem them properly. The trick I discovered is to hem them before pressing and sewing. Now I am a convert to the beauty of knife pleats and adore using wool fabric to make them, as they come out so sharp under my makeshift clapper. I highly recommend you give them a go in your next doll skirt or dress flounce. They make the dolls look adorable. As you know, I always recommend you use natural fibers in your fabric choices, as I find they're the ones that always produce the best and most desirable effects, especially when it comes to pleats and historically minded sewing. And speaking of pleats, how about cartridge pleats? They are the creme de la creme, the exaltation of pleated versions, in my humble opinion, of course. They became quite a traditional item of construction in 18th century gowns. If you're a fan of Outlander, you know this. You can check out the book series Parents of Fashion for more detailed diagrams and extant garment examinations. If historical sewing is appealing to you, that book collection will give you endless hours of construction ideas and inspiration. The reason I love cartridge pleats is that you get to bunch up so much fabric that no matter how deep you make them or not, you end up with the fullest of skirts. So much so that they just make your heart pitter-patter. Cartridge pleats are a joy to make and are really so simple. I have made them in wool plaid, as is more traditional, but also in cashmere. So don't go thinking that you can't cartridge pleat up a whole linen skirt if you're so inclined. Besides, the dolls are really humbled when you offer them a cartridge pleated item. They know you went the extra fabric mile for them. I love the look of quilted petticoats, so I left this one for last. I feel quilted petticoats belong to heavy winters, where you need the layers to keep those legs warm, even if those legs are already stuffed with wool. Unfortunately, I feel like my initial attempt, while cute and lovely, is not up to par with my standards anymore. So I desperately wish to do this again. My mistake was using a very thick cotton batting to quilt the skirt. With dolls, you really ought to pay attention to fabric weave and weight, as well as scale if you're using a print. I like to play with the weave of the fabrics I choose for my dolls, not always using tightly woven fabrics. I feel that adds to the charm of my work. But it is very important to still choose the proper scale, especially with prints, when sewing with a historical-minded flair. Next time, I would love to use wool batting or wadding for the filling to avoid the stiffness of using the normal quilting cotton batting. I would also choose a more interesting fabric, perhaps silk satin or charmeuse. One can dream of new techniques to try, including varying the materials chosen. For my initial attempt, I chose a very organic design and quilted the whole skirt with diamonds. Going forward, I would like to make a more traditional petticoat quilted design. Therefore, the choice of lighter fabrics and thinner batting, hand stitch embellishments. Here, the world is our oyster. I find sewing for dolls so incredibly inspiring. You don't need to make ultra-practical items, especially if your doll has a remarkable story to tell or is based on a historical character. Adding embroidery, especially when done by hand, adds so much charm and striking appeal to the clothing. Anything from simple stitches such as French knots, bullion knots, satin stitch, or even the simplest lacy daisy stitch. Replicating a painting, an antique pattern, or a tapestry design are all fair game ideas for adding that special handmade touch with historical flavor. Handmade buttons, whether made in fabric, such as the more medieval-looking ones, or covering a mold, making them with needlework, leather, knotwork, etc. It adds the ultimate touch to your doll's clothing closures. I'm a raging fan of making fabric buttons, mainly because they always match the outfit and you can make them in any size you require. I do this by cutting a circle of fabric, gathering the edges, and pulling on the thread to cinch it. Then I flatten the circle and closing the edges gathered and using this fabric as the actual stuffing of the fabric button as you make stitches on opposing sides to cinch the fabric even more. This technique can also be used to make little noses, bums on bunny dolls, or just plain decorative baubles on your doll's clothing. Another technique to use, and one I've already shared with you before, is smocking. You can prepare the fabric by hand using a grid or a check printed fabric, as in the case of gingham, or you could also use a fancy pleater to make ultra tiny pleats and smock after. Smocking is not something I have done a lot, but I simply adore the look of it. I especially love those hard-working smocks used by country folk, with these details added to provide more room in their clothing or cinch it to fit a narrower part. I have a glorious girl's dress here that serves as a constant inspiration for this technique, made all in white with red embroidery. Such contrast, it screams life to me. In my upcoming dressmaking series on Patreon, I'll try to include miniature lacing and handwork eyelets, hook and eyes if needed, fabric buttons, folk embroidery, laces, and pin tucks again. Maybe I will even try a bit of smocking. We will definitely try to finish a lot of seams by hand, such as binding them in bias cut fabric strips or using flat fill seams. I am very excited for that series to take place. Do wish me luck. So what do you think of these historical sewing details? Do you love adding them to your doll's clothing, or have you tried any of these techniques before? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Until next time, keep creating and loving on your dolls.